Good morning, friends. You're watching Much Ado About Something today, and I'm Donna. Well, Eli, one of my grandsons, we're out here in the garden this morning. We're coming out here. It rained really heavy Saturday and Sunday, and we've had a lot of rain, so we're out here just looking and seeing what's going on out here in the front gardens today. Eli's doing his art. He is coloring.
Coloring some Mickey Mouse.
Yeah, and I am just out here waking up this morning and looking at the gardens and getting ready for the day. Now, the lifestyle part of my channel is the fact that I'm from the Appalachian Mountains, and I share a lot of that culture, a lot of stories from my past, and a lot of things going on that went on when I was growing up in the Appalachian Mountains. And I thought, well, you know, a lot of people don't know a lot about the Appalachian Mountains. And so I thought I'd just share some research that I did. I did Google the Appalachian Mountains and got some information that I thought was really useful. I thought it was really informative, and it'll help you understand when you watch Appalachian channels about some of the differences and some of the things that go on with this Appalachian culture and the region. Now, the first thing I Googled is, where do the Appalachians start and where do they end? Now, the Appalachians extending for almost 2,000 miles, 3,200 kilometers from the Canadian province of Newfoundland and Labrador to central Alabama in the United States. The Appalachian Mountains form a natural barrier between the eastern coastal plain and the vast interior lowlands of North America. Virginia has the most mileage of the trail of any state, 1/4 of the entire trail, and all of the state of West Virginia is in the Appalachians. So that is pretty interesting. That lets you know how big the Appalachian region is, how many people, and how across, well, Canada and the United States is, you know, how much land and how many people are actually included in the Appalachian culture. And it says, I've looked up, what does it mean if you are an Appalachian? A native or inhabitant of Appalachia, especially one of predominantly Scotch-Irish, English, or German ancestry, who exemplifies the characteristic cultural traditions of this region. And a lot of native Indians there too. I don't know why that's not mentioned. The native Indians are so prominent in the Appalachian area, and the Malugians, they're prominent in the Appalachia area, but they don't mention them here in the in the Google search that I did on what does it mean if you're an Appalachian. So to me, it wasn't all inclusive by not mentioning the native Indians that were there and the Malugian people that are there. But I wanted to share some of this because, you know, we hear Appalachia, and then sometimes I get comments from people that are from different areas of the region, and they're like, well, that's not how we did it in our area. For example, I have a video on how to make authentic Appalachian cat head biscuits, and those indeed are authentic Appalachian cat head biscuits from my area. I was taught how to make those biscuits when I was 6 years old. Well, I got a comment that one man said they're not cat heads if they're not bigger than 3 regular biscuits put together. Well, my husband and I got tickled because you know, cat head biscuits are in reference to the size of a house cat, Not a bobcat, not a mountain lion, but a house cat. So as long as your biscuit's about the size of a cat head, and that can vary just a little bit, but it's about the same average size biscuit, then that's a cat head biscuits. I'm not sure in his region what kind of cat they were forming their biscuits after. But we call anything bigger than a cat head biscuit, it becomes a pone of bread. And that's from the native Indians that were influenced our family over the years from the area that we're from. So yes, there is a bigger biscuit, but that biscuit is called a pone of bread in our area. I can only share with you the way things were in our area. And there are different regions. You know, well, I had to pause it for a second. The garbage truck, it's garbage day today, and the big truck was really loud crashing through here, so I have to go ahead and pause this for a minute. Me and Eli are outside sitting on the front porch.
Yeah.
But Appalachia's a big region. It's made up of 423 counties. It spans across 13 states and 206,000 square miles. So it's a lot of region, it's a lot of area there, there's a lot of people. So there's not to say that there's not going to be some differences across that area. The 13 states that include Appalachia are Alabama, Georgia, Kentucky, Maryland, Mississippi, New York, North Carolina, Ohio, Pennsylvania, South Carolina, Tennessee, Virginia, and West Virginia. Virginia being the state that has the most Appalachian territory, it has almost a quarter of the whole total region is in Virginia. And West Virginia, the whole state of West Virginia, is in the Appalachian Mountains. So yes, that's a large span of a region, and there's a lot of different people in that. Coming from Canada all the way down to Alabama, that's the whole stretch of the Appalachian region. So there's differences within that region. There are some differences in language. There are some differences in the way things are done, depending on your area and what people did in your area. So that's why I share with you what went on in our area. Now, the part of the Appalachian Mountains that I am from is the Virginia and North Carolina border area. My mom was born and raised in Virginia, Carroll County, Virginia. She came from that Virginia mountains, and we traveled up until I was 9 years old, back and forth across that Virginia and North Carolina line up until I was 9 years old. And then we settled in North Carolina with my parents. They came and they set up there because that's where their jobs led them. That's where they found work, and that's the part of the Appalachian Mountains I'm from. So you would say Southern Appalachian. So I'm a Southern Appalachian, and the stories that I tell you and the things that I share with you are from that region, and that's how it was where I grew up. There may be a little bit differences, like I know I have watched an Appalachian channel, and they were talking about white cornmeal was for the animals. Was for people, and yellow cornmeal was for animals. In our region, if you ate cornbread, it was yellow cornbread. We had yellow cornbread. I guess we were eating like animals, but see the difference in the very region about what they thought about cornmeal, or some of the foods that they ate. It varies just slightly, but in general, most Appalachians understand other Appalachians. They connect with it if they've been raised in that culture. They understand if they have family and relatives that are from that culture. They understand that there are a lot of similarities and there are some differences. So that's where a lot of the accents come from, and I have watched a lot of videos and done some research on Appalachians, and that's easy to pull up. You can just search it, through Google or any avenue that you're interested in the Appalachian Mountains. There's a lot of material. some old videos. There's a lot of things that you can pull up, even on YouTube, and find out about Appalachian culture. And it's a very fascinating culture. I love to watch those videos on the Appalachian people they interview. And we have some family that married into our family that are from the Kentucky area. So yeah, there's a lot of differences across the board. And I wanted to clarify that as I go forward and tell my stories and share the recipes and stuff from the area that I'm from. If they vary slightly from what your recipes are and you're in the Appalachian region, then you can understand why there are some differences. It's not one across the board standard for everything. Now, some things are pretty standard for the Appalachian region. They just are because of the way the land was. But in general, there's some differences and some subtleties and some things that you may notice. And I wanted to just share that part with you. Now, I did write down some of the recipes. I got kind of tickled about some of the, I Googled
Baby spider.
traditional Appalachian food. Oh yeah.
Cute.
And and this is what they listed for the traditional Appalachian food. I'm sorry, I'm out here holding this, and my arm is it's affecting. It's starting to get heavy. But some of the Appalachian foods this is what they had listed under the Google search for traditional Appalachian foods. It's peanut brittle, and I can make a mean peanut brittle. I can make a good peanut brittle. I could probably make a business out of it and sell that stuff. I love peanut brittle, but it's not good for your teeth. Sweet potato pie, pork chops, biscuits and gravy, fried chicken, chicken and dumplings, collard greens, cracklings, and ham hocks. And for some reason, the soup beans are left out because in our area, you didn't have a meal that there wasn't soup beans and fried apples. I mean, that was just part of your meal. Soup beans, pintos, cornbread, so that must be maybe distinctive to my area, the cornbread and the fried and stewed apples, or the soup beans. I don't think so. I think that's pretty across the board. That was common foods. They're just not mentioned here on the traditional Appalachian food list. And then, of course, we are where the Blue Ridge Mountains are. And that's a whole different thing. So if you're in the Blue Ridge Mountains, you are part of Appalachia. And I went on to ask, what's the difference between the Smoky Mountains and the Appalachian Mountains? And the Blue Ridge Parkway, which the Blue Ridge Parkway is a state park. It's a Great Smoky Mountains National Park, encompasses some of the oldest mountains on Earth. It's located in the Appalachian Mountains of North Carolina and Tennessee. The state boundary line bisects the park, which is one of the largest in the eastern United States. So the Blue Ridge Parkway, truly an amazing place. And it says, what's the difference between the Smoky Mountains and the Appalachian Mountains? The Appalachian Mountains are a large range that stretches from Newfoundland, Canada to Alabama. In comparison, a subrange of the Appalachian that only cover parts of Tennessee and North Carolina. So that's the difference in the Smoky Mountains, or the blue Smoky Mountains. A lot of people will call it the Blue Ridge, because that area of the mountains, when you look at them from a distance, those mountains are blue. Completely beautiful, very unique thing. And the reason they're blue is because those trees, those natural plants, they let off a chemical. Those trees in the Blue Ridge Mountains, they let off a chemical called isoprene. And that isoprene gives a blue hue. And what that does is it helps shade that part of the mountain. It's just beautiful. And you just have to see them. And if you don't see them, then look them up and just look at some pictures and some photos of the Blue Ridge Parkway or the the Great Smoky Mountains. Just look it up and look at how beautiful that area is. And then there were other things that I looked up. It says, how many Americans live in Appalachia? The region's 26.3 million residents live in the 13 states that make up Appalachia. What do Appalachians believe? Christianity has been the predominant religion in Appalachia since European immigration to the area, and that began in the 1700s. The Christian influences blended with traditional European and native Indians' spiritual beliefs create a unique blend of folklore and mythology. And there are a lot of superstitions. I remember growing up, and there were a lot of superstitions that you heard all the time, all the way around you, and you didn't even realize that that was, that was part of the culture of where you were at. I remember my dad used to say, you never sew on Sunday because every stitch you make, you'll have to take out with your nose. Just crazy things. And of course, something in me instinctively knew these things were not true. I heard them all the time, the superstitions, but I never believed them or took heart in any of them, but I did hear my family express those superstitions. We'll have to make a whole video on some of the superstitious sayings that they said there in the Appalachians. And I'm sure everybody that lived or grew up in the Appalachians can add to that list because every family had their own set of superstitions. And I guess that's what they're talking about down there where it says the Indian spiritual belief and the traditional European and Native American or Native Indians. I never call them Native Americans because they were here long before it was America. They're Native Indians. And they only became Americans later when America settled here, right? So they were Native Indians long before they were Native Americans. So I always call them Native Indians because that's what we called them growing up. They were not Native Americans, they were Native Indians. They were Native Indians to that area, and their family had been there long before our family had been there. But those traditions bleed into your culture, and they mix with, part of being raised in Appalachian Mountains. A lot of the food that we have was inspired by the Native Indians. I think pretty much cornbread is probably, and the pone bread. And then there's other recipes and things that can be traced back that were influenced by the Native Indians in the area where we grew up. Well, this is probably a lot of information. I just thought I'd share it with you. I didn't know if you would be interested in just knowing about the Appalachian Mountains and what they were, and if you would want to know the difference in the Great Smoky Mountains, the Blue Ridge Parkway, and the Appalachian Mountains. If you wanted to know how all that incorporated together, why those are sometimes interchangeable in areas because of where we grew up. If you grew up in the Blue Ridge Parkway, that unique area where the mountains appear blue from a distance, that's a very distinctive and beautiful thing, and that's in North Carolina and Tennessee. It's a sub-range of the Appalachians that cover parts of Tennessee and North Carolina. And I have always loved the Blue Ridge Mountains. I have always loved to look at them. When we ride up there, I feel an excitement that is rare for me, and just be coming back to that area and seeing those beautiful blue mountains and seeing that area. Very beautiful, very unique. Of course, I love the culture. I love being Appalachian. I love the people. And there are a lot of things that are very different there. I can drive there and I immediately feel like I'm going back home, and I immediately feel relaxed. I feel a lot of the things slipping away that I carry here in the city, that when I get up that way, I don't feel it because I feel that starting to just slip away. And when I get up to where my family's at and I go and visit, things just seem slower, peaceful. Things are different up there than they are here, and I would love to live there, but I don't see that happening anytime soon. And that's how that is for us. We are on a third of an acre, somewhere in between a third and a quarter of an acre of land, a land lot here in the city, and the city is really the bigger city that we're near. It's just really flowing into our little city. Things are changing. And Donald's been here almost 40 years. So the city, this little rural city that we moved into 40 years ago has changed. It's got much busier. They have built up much more around it. It's got louder and, of course, more people. And, of course, you know, with the millions of immigrants that are flooding into our American culture, it's changing a lot of things about our culture. And all things change. All living things change. But there's some things that I'm just sad to see change about cultures and the way America has been. There are good things. You hear a lot of bad things in the news, but there are a lot of good things about people's cultures and the way people have lived since America has been established, since this great country has been established. There are a lot of things, and it's just that's a whole different can of worms. But I love to see the culture, and I love to go back to where that culture's preserved, and we can go and share some of the oldest mountains in the world and be able to just enjoy living in a slower pace in a quieter area. So even though I don't live in the Appalachians anymore, I live very close to them, and I can visit them when I am hungry to go back and feel like I'm at home, and that's a good thing for me. Well, that's me just sharing a little bit of Appalachian culture, a little bit of Appalachian facts with you. Hope it clears up some things, and then from now on, when I tell my Appalachian stories and I share some of the regions and the culture that I grew up in, I hope it gives you a little bit more understanding. Well, this morning I'm just going to walk around the garden. I want to show you what has changed since we've had these major rains. And we have really had some rains. I mean, one day, I think it was Sunday, the sky got dark. I mean, it just flooded rain for hours. And of course, you'll never hear me complain about the rain because you need it. Our gardens need it, our lands need it, our reservoirs need to be filled up, and we need the rain. So I am never complaining about it, but we have had a tremendous amount of it. And in the fact that we've had this rain, everything is just squeezed and green, just as full and green as it can possibly be out here in the garden. There are some things that are blooming. There are the tiger lilies right here that you haven't saw, and they're right there. I'll get a closer up shot and show you those. Some people call them Turk's caps. I think the wild ones are called Turk's caps. And that would be these right here. These are some that are not open, and when they turn orange, they'll be opening soon. And these are these beautiful lilies. Now the daylilies are coming to an end of their bloom. I came and got an evening shot because I got these before they completely shut down because I wanted to catch them for you, these double daylilies. But they are coming near the end of their bloom. These angel trumpet flowers they're growing big. They'll have the big, beautiful angel trumpets hanging on them. I've got some red bud that's got to come up. But there are things that are fully in bloom and beautiful. Had plenty of rain, And Donald did put a little compost on this front garden, and that compost has really helped these flowers to have the food that they need. And you know, I leave the morning glories in the flowers because that's great food for the hummingbirds and for the bees. They love the morning glories. And they love these trumpet-shaped flowers, the salvia. And this salvia has gotten huge. It'll be one of the things that I'll have to divide this year, even though I divided it last year. When I divided it, it just gave it more room to grow. And this big area I have for the salvia, look at that beautiful flowers on that thing. It has gotten huge and it's overgrown its space. So I'm going to be dividing it, and I'll put a new area of salvia over in the garden. The hanging baskets are doing good. They got plenty of water. That's great. I've been trying to keep my hanging baskets alive. And of course, we've got the purple coneflower and what we call black-eyed Susans. And I've let some morning glory grow up there for these bees and birds. We've got all of that blooming right there. I've got a tomato that has blooms on it coming up in my potted plant right there, and that's okay. I'm just going to leave it. The lemon balm has overtaken its area. It's growing onto the driveway. I've got to trim that back. I'm going to cut that back pretty good, pretty close to the ground. And then out here in the middle, you can see there are things that are blooming here. I'm sorry for my shadow. Let me move over to the side. You can see the lamb's ear. It's pretty full out here. Donald and I did get out here and trim things away from the sidewalk. Off of the sidewalk right here. There was many things that had just grown onto the driveway. I'm saying sidewalk, but it's the driveway. Now the Queen Anne's lace has quit blooming. I'll be saving seeds, so I've left these little heads here, trying to let them dry so I can have plenty of seeds and scatter those for next year. The hanging baskets are looking good. They've got enough rainwater that they're hanging in there. They're not completely dried up like they did last year. Last year, the heat, it got so hot that I had a really hard time keeping my hanging baskets moist, keeping them watered. I would water them twice a day, and the plants still struggled. But they look like they're hanging in there pretty good, the hanging baskets. And there is a little patch of Queen Anne's lace that's over here on the front that's blooming, and that's just opened up since the rain. Most of it is here in the seed stage. They're drying up and making seeds. And of course, here's these beautiful orange flowers right here. They are lovely. That is sage growing right there. I harvest sage and I use it in my recipes. I have a really good sage sauce that goes over pasta, sage and butter sauce that's delicious over pasta, and that is included in my videos if you want to scroll through that and find that video. But you can see back here how things are just fully grown and saturated and have plenty of good water. Flower beds are full and beautiful. I'm going to take you over here to the perennial herb garden and show you that for a little bit. That pineapple sage has really gotten big. And I've got a few more sage plants because I used a lot of sage. Got one here and then one over here. That's the oregano that's blooming, and I let some things bloom because insects and birds love those flowers. The comfrey is really growing. It's just spread out here. I wanted to get some comfrey root and move that to another area so I'd have more than one group of comfrey, and I still will do that probably nearer to the end of the year. There's a rosemary in there. some thyme that's down lower. And so things are looking good in the perennial herb garden, but it does need to be weeded. There's a lot of work that needs to be done in each bed in this area. And that, of course, will have to be done when I can get to it. I've got all 6 grandchildren coming today. Eli came earlier, and I'll have the other 5 will be coming at different times today. So I'll have all 6 grandchildren. They're a priority, so I'll be feeding them and spending time with them this summer, the short summer. It flies by so quickly. But I'll be spending time with my 6 grandchildren today, and there's plenty that needs to be done in the house, which means there will be less time for me to be out here in the garden. So I get out here when I can, but my sole focus has not been on the gardens, and that leaves me in a whole different category, you know, managing my time and putting what is important first. These are the elephant ears. I'm glad you came and heard about the Appalachian facts that I hope helps you when I share my Appalachian stories with you. And I'm glad that you got to come and see the differences in the gardens today. And the elderberries are loaded. Just look at the elderberries. This has got to be the best year for elderberries in our area. Of course, this one has never been this loaded. And then the ones in the back are just as loaded too. So we are anticipating a great elderberry harvest this year as these berries ripen. You can see they're green. The blooms are fading. The berries are forming. And as these grow and get darker, I'll share with you the harvest when we harvest these elderberries. And you know what the native Indians say? If you have a year where you have plenty of something, that means you're going to need it. So if you have an abundant harvest, that means in the coming season that you're going to need that harvest. So we'll be harvesting those and keeping those so we can make syrup out of them. And then over here, the work area. This is my hibiscus my daughter bought for me from the farmer's market. It's beautiful. I have yet to find a permanent place for that. I may just bring that in because the last hibiscus I grew, it didn't make it through the winter. But this is the little pavers that I've put here. I wanted to do stone, but I wasn't able to collect enough stone to get it done in a timely manner. But look how shaded and green this area is, how really cool and pretty this area is. That's why I put most of the things that I'm trying to start root or anything that needs to be in the plant hospital goes in this area because it's so cool and shady. I know that nothing's going to be too harsh on it in this area, but one day we are going to have a potting shed here, right here in this little area. I'm looking forward to that. And these stone, these pavers are just going to lead the way to that. And so that's what all this is. This is a workstation. One of those pretty hibiscus. And this is my little potting table my son made me. And there's things that are underway here. I want to start some seeds. Yes, even this late in the year, I want to start some seeds or some second plantings and to get some things out that I didn't get out. But that's the little workstation. Well, I appreciate you joining me today, and thank you. And stay tuned to the next, to my next vlog, because I'll have some things going on with some stories and some good things going on to share with you. Thank you for joining me today, and like always, until next time.